History buffs of Reddit, what is a piece of history that often goes overlooked despite being very interesting or funny? During the First Sino-Japanese War, a Chinese admiral pawned one of the main guns on his flagship to a scrap dealer in order to pay off some gambling debts. This was the same war where the empress embezzled from the army to fund her palace renovations. It's amazing they lost that one. Chinese ship captains tried to fire their cannons, only to find that the gunpowder charges contained sand. Chinese government did not give two shits about their own people and only went through the motions of having a country. They then got volcanically angry when anyone suggested that they had a problem. There is also the amazing story of Philo McGiffin, an American who commanded the Chinese battleship Chenyun. China lost the battle, and, needing a scapegoat, McGiffin was blamed because he was the foreigner. He looked pretty rough after the battle. He eventually died of his wounds after returning to a hero's welcome in America. He's a fascinating story of a real-life adventurer. The American Hippo Bill. During a meat crisis in 1910, some American legislators wanted to introduce African hippos to the southern wetlands so we could all enjoy lake cow bacon. Obviously, the bill never passed. We have a huge rodent problem here in New York City. I suggest we introduce black mambas into the city to eradicate the problem. This type of thing actually happened in Australia. In Queensland, they were suffering from an infestation of cane beetles in the sugar cane crops. They introduced the cane toad, a natural predator of cane beetles, to fix the problem. Instead, cane toads became more of a pest than cane beetles, and are still a problem today. The savior of Paris. Paris as we know it may not exist today had it not been for one man. During the German military occupation of France in WWII, Paris became the capital of this occupied zone, while France moved its own capital to Vichy to keep the state alive. During this time Paris saw no real bombing or fighting, and remained relatively unscathed, compared to London or Berlin by the war's end. However, the commander of Nazi-led Paris, General Dietrich von Choltitz, was given orders by Hitler to blow up the bridges and level the city should it be overtaken by the Allies, as he would never return it to them the way it was. Within a month the Free French forces liberated the city and Choltitz had famously ignored Hitler's call. Is Paris burning? The general grew fond of the Paris during his short time there and recognized its immense cultural and historical importance, so today he is remembered as the savior of Paris. How the actual call from Hitler went, or whether or not it even took place, is debated, but we do know that if Choltitz had not grown sympathetic, we may have lost some of the best parts of Paris. Is Paris Burning? Is a fantastic book about this, and the liberation of France. In Bernal Diaz del Castillo's The True History of the Conquest of New Spain he mentions that a priest died during his time with Cortez. When searching through his stuff, they found a leather dildo. Another funny incident, they held Montezuma hostage in modern-day Mexico City. While a hostage, he still had gold and was a king, so he was treated half decently. One of the Spanish guards accidentally farted in his face. The guard was embarrassed and apologized profusely for humiliating a noble. To show there were no hard feelings, Montezuma gave the guard a gold piece. The stupid guard then farted again hoping to get another gold piece. How strange is the concept of taking another animal hide and inserting it into oneself for pleasure. Did he get another gold piece or not? Isn't that what normally happens? Yes, Montezuma was depleted of all his fortune in this manner. People came from miles around to fart in his face. Edit. First gold. Thanks for giving me exactly one more than Montezuma has. He comes up now and again on Till, but for all the history about WWII that is often bandied about in the culture at large, I had never heard about the fascinating double agent Juan Pujol Garcia, also known by his codename, Garbo. The story. Juan was from Spain and had become disgusted by fascism. He wrote letters to the UK and the US saying, "Hey, I'll spy on Germany for you guys." UK and US said, "Nah, we got this." Juan said to himself, "I'll go ahead and spy anyway," and posed as an artsy-loving Spanish govt official to become a German agent. He was assigned to spy on London, but instead went to Lisbon and made up funny reports based on English magazines and newsreels. After a while, the UK realized someone was doing a jolly good job diverting Nazi resources and took him on as a spy. He worked throughout the war, with Germany funding his totally real network of, not at all imaginary spies. He was responsible for diverting many German troops during the invasion of Normandy. He was also awarded medals by both the Nazis and the Brits for his work. Alboin, king of the Lombards, took his wife Rosamund as a spoil of war after he killed her father in the Lombard-Gepid War. Then at one point he made her drink from her father's skull, which he kept as a trophy and fashioned into a mug, telling her to drink merrily with your father. She had him assassinated. After reading the Wikipedia, it actually gets more interesting from there. Rosamund's lover, Helmichis, suggested that a guy named Peredia would be a good assassin. Peredia did not want to get involved in killing Alboin, so Rosamund dressed as a servant and had sex with him. Once she told him that he actually had sex with the queen, Peredia agreed to kill Alboin to avoid punishment for adultery with the queen. After Peredia killed Alboin, Rosamund and Helmichis wanted to rule. This was unpopular, so they took Alboin's daughter from his first marriage and left for Ravenna. They married, but Rosamund found a new lover, Longinus. Longinus wanted to marry Rosamund, so they planned to kill Helmichis with poison. Helmichis caught onto the plan and forced Rosamund to drink the poison that was meant for him. Then he drank some himself, and they both died. The time a pope dug up another pope's skeleton, put it on trial, found it guilty, had it reburied, dug it up again, and chucked it into the river. Edit. Well, people seem interested, so here's an abridged version of the Cadaver Synod. Still, read the wiki link and sources. Crazy time in papal history. So, Pope Stephen VI really hated the guy that was pope before the guy that was pope before him, aka Pope Formosus. I believe their relationship would be called Pope Twice Removed. That line will work on 2 levels in just a second. Anyways, so Steph super hated him. It was pretty much all because of powerful families and politics and grudges. Still, Pope is a literally lifelong gig, and that means the guy he hated had been dead for a bit by the time Stu became Pope. So what did Stephen do? Why, he dug up the ultra-dead previous pontiff and put his skeleton on trial, of course. He was found guilty, stripped of his garments, had 3 fingers removed, they were his blessed fingers, was redressed in peasant garb, and reburied in a pauper's grave. This didn't feel like enough for old Stevie V, so he dug him up again and had him chucked into the Tiber River. Stephen VI was then imprisoned for the whole thing and later strangled. History. I'm honestly astonished that Cadaver Synod is not yet the name of a metal band. The Aztecs are overlooked in most history classes, but they were far from the primitive tribesmen that most people think of. At the height of its power, Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Triple Alliance, was rivaled in size by cities like London and Constantinople, and it was all built on a giant artificial island. It's a shame their culture was obliterated, because though they might have been a bit too obsessed with sacrificial killing, they were an incredibly fascinating civilization. On top of this, they were defeated by Cortes and his handful of European soldiers, as well as almost 100,000 other natives that were enemies of the Aztecs. People tend to leave that part out. It could easily be argued that if they weren't so obsessed with sacrificing and fighting their neighbors, they would never have been beaten. Romans believed in other people's god/goddess. So when they would attack a city, they would pray to the god/gods of said city to abandon the occupants and support the Romans instead. If they won, they would give the god a special place in Rome or completely incorporate it into the state religion. Also, the ancient Greeks did not view it as gay or straight, they saw it as dominant and submissive. In short, they had no concept of being gay. As to the whole believing in other people's gods thing, that was pretty much standard before Judaism and Christianity. The covenant flat out states there is only one god and you will not have any other gods before him, which was absolutely weird at the time. From an ancient's perspective, yeah, everyone had their gods. The Greek gods were for them, and the Egyptian gods worked in the Nile, and everything was pretty hunky-dory. The Romans' whole shtick was that they were relatively inclusive people-wise as an empire, so of course, they'd take their gods. I mean, they joined the empire, so why the hell would we make them worship some silly Etruscan half god when they probably had their own? Edit. Okay, I get it. The commandments never said there was only one god. It's that their one god was way better than anyone else's, and he'd f up anyone that said otherwise. Thank you for watching video. Like, share and subscribe this channel.